Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas, here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us today on Law for the People with your host, me, Eric Cedillo, coming to you every Friday from 1 to 3 Central Standard Time. As always, just everyone who's listening in, just recall that we do base all of our stuff mainly on Texas law. So if you're listening from out of the country or different part of the state, just kind of take that into consideration. All right, we have two wonderful guests today. First of which I'm very excited to talk with. His name is Justin Henry, and he is running for District 9 trustee with the Dallas Independent School District. And why don't you just say hello and introduce yourself there, Justin?
So first, thank you. It's humbling to be on the show. I appreciate you having the time, and I'm just thankful to be here, and I'd love to have this great conversation.
Absolutely, man. Now, Justin, you're running for trustee here in Dallas, and I don't think people always really truly understand, what that kind of entails. Mm-hmm. What does a trustee do?
Yeah, so we've spent some of the time on the campaign trail trying to engage and inform folks on the full idea of what a trustee does, including, my wife.
Yeah.
But three main jobs. The first one's hire and fire the superintendent. The second piece is to approve the budget as presented by the administration, and the third piece is to set policy.
Okay.
And we've always added a fourth piece that really is an official business, but I think you're an elected official, so you have an obligation to your constituents for constituent services.
Yeah.
So I think that fourth piece is making sure that you're informing and empowering the community around the major issues that impact not only DISD, but all our 155,000 plus kids that are in DISD.
Okay. Justin, let's talk about you first. We usually, in the show, like to kind of get into who the candidates who are running. Mm-hmm. Kind of wanted to start off with what you're running for, so people kind of listen and take that into consideration. But I think most importantly, the kind of the upbringing, the character of an individual, we kind of really glean that from, how they were brought up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big stickler for you're a big product of your parents and your family, kind of on the upbringing. So you grew up in Arlington, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit before that, because I always have to start with my grandparents. Mother's Day just passed. My grandmas are probably the foundation of our family. My father's mom was born in Prescott, Arkansas, where she spent most of her time sharecropping fields, and she literally hopped on a boxcar and headed west looking for more opportunities, and she settled in Kilgore, Texas. So my grandma, she always sacrificed to provide opportunities for not only herself, but her family and the community around her, and she just instilled that in my dad, who then instilled it in me. So we have a long legacy. I always like to say I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and the first people I think about are my grandparents. So yeah, like you said, I grew up in Arlington. My parents were divorced for as long as I can remember. I don't ever remember them being together. I lived with my mom. I pretty much was raised by my mom. My dad I saw my dad. He was an engaged father, but I spent nearly all of my time with my mom.
Yeah.
I think early, and I share this story a lot, in second grade, my mom made one of the most impactful decisions of my life. She recognized that the school that I was at, one, wasn't meeting my needs academically, and two, wasn't the middle school that I was supposed to go to wasn't the safest environment. So like my grandma, when she was in the sharecropping field looking for opportunity, my mom looked for opportunity elsewhere, and she found it across town.
Yeah.
It just happens to be there was a school across the church, and unlike our neighborhood, apartments, duplexes, other issues within our community, this had 2-story brick homes, and she had a feeling that the resources in that school would be different, and she was right, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And she transferred me there. So I went from being in an elementary school full of students of color to being in a second grade class where I was one of 2 African American kids and minorities. Period.
Right.
We didn't have any Latinos.
Right.
So academically, it was beneficial for me, but socially I had a lot of struggles. In school suspension, out of school suspension, discipline problems. I had to go to the counselor before I went to class. I have visuals remembering the teacher putting me in the back of the class near a supply closet away from all the other students. And ultimately they sat my mom down and they had a conversation with her saying, your son can't learn in the classroom. And she advocated for me. She felt that wasn't how I was at home. But that wasn't enough for those individual teachers. It wasn't until another teacher at the school, Miss McKissick, who taught 5th grade, she happened to be our pastor's wife, and she came and advocated for me as well. She said, Justin goes to church at our church, and he sits next to his mom, and he's not doing these behaviors. He's not talking back. He's not running around. He's not doing all these things you're describing, so there has to be something else going on in this classroom.
Right.
So I always say my mom and Ms. McKissick advocated for me when folks couldn't see the best in me. I didn't know it at the time, but when I'm advocating for others or when I have other experience, I always go back to that. Like we all have, I think, a duty to advocate for others, especially if you're sitting in some position of privilege or benefited from someone else's sacrifice.
Right. Right. So you're in the second grade. You're going to school. You're getting in trouble. They kind of come in and advocate on your behalf, as you had mentioned. And then what changes, or does it change?
It does change. So I think Miss McKissick and my mom advocating for me kept me in the mainstream classroom, which allowed me to get to some teachers who were able to take that energy and whatever you want to call it and rechannel it in a positive manner. I have, Miss Richardson, she's since married, but her name was Miss Richardson. I remember her taking me outside and just racing me. She really found a way to connect with me in a way that I responded positively in the classroom. So, and there was a bit of bias. I think the teachers that I had in second grade had some, I was one of the few African-American kids. I think they had expectations for me that are different than what my parents had for me, whether it's lower or behavioral. My mom, when she told me to sit down, there was no options. It was Justin, sit down. Justin, eat your food. Justin, make up your bed. Justin, clean your room. There was no options. And if I chose an option, there was an immediate consequence. I remember the teachers talking to me, Justin, I'd really like it if you would sit down, or I'd really like it if you'd stop talking to so-and-so. Well, as a second grader, I felt like I had options. So even culturally, I think there's different ways that different families and communities engage with their kids. And it's important that teachers know that and understand that, and great teachers do. And that's what Miss McKissick did. She allowed me to get to those great teachers that could connect with me, and that helped.
All right. So you started doing better in school?
Yeah, I started doing better.
School.
Still got in a bit of trouble, just wasn't as bad.
I know what you mean.
But
high school, then you went off to high school?
Yeah, so I was always pushing my mom. I wanted to go back to my neighborhood schools for middle school. She wanted me to stay where I was, but in high school she allowed me to make the decision. So I got to go back to my home high school, James Boyd High School in Arlington. So I got to go back to school with all my friends that I grew up with, and then got to be back part of my community. I felt like. And I went there, and given that I was in a pipeline of schools that had different resources. I don't think I was any smarter than the other kids, but I think we had more resources. When I went back to my home school, I was in AP classes, I was in honors classes, and I don't think I really recognized it at the time. I remember wondering why our home high school had so many minority students, but when you went to the AP classes, it completely flipped. Like the few non-students of color were in the AP track, and that bothered me a bit. But finished high school, did decent. Wasn't at the top of my class. I wasn't even in the top 10%, but I did well, I think, and got into the University of Texas at Austin, the College of Engineering. I thought I had it made. I was like, wow, finally getting out, going to college. That's what everyone's been talking about for so long. So my mom, my grandma have always been pushing, and get there and just got hit on the head freshman year. I remember taking my first physics exam and getting a 32. There was no curve. I studied, I tried hard, and just failed miserably. I had to take some remedial classes for reading and writing, and it just was, I felt like I'd been betrayed somehow. I didn't know what happened, and I saw people from other parts of the state, whether it be Plano or somewhere else, grade levels ahead of me. And I wish I could say that was my unique story, but my friends that went to Samuel, my friends that went to, from the Valley and the Rio Grande City High School, and my friends that went to schools in Tyler, we were all kind of, as students of color, bunched in these classes. Even the university knew that we were coming in with different skill sets, and that's when the seed was planted that this education system is inequitable, and we have to fix it. It shouldn't matter what high school you went to, what town you grew up in. When you get to the job market, or you get to higher education, you should be able to compete with anybody.
I went to, I don't know if I told you that, I went to a Catholic private school until the 8th grade, and literally then I went to North Dallas High School, which is a relatively tough inner city school, it's my home school. But in all honesty, with the exception of a couple of classes that I took, some AP English courses and perhaps a government class, I don't think I really learned much at all. It was just it was a difficult, as well. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and was the open and really I relied heavily on the education that I had received at St. Thomas at the Catholic private school. So there's no doubt, that we need work in a lot of ways. This is why this is so fundamentally critical that we get people who understand that, representing these kids. And that's been a big platform of yours, representing the children, coming in and doing that. Tell us a little bit about that, if you can, in terms of how that, your experiences, kind of transition into what it is you're doing now.
Yeah, so the experience is personally going through this and feeling like I was very close to being tracked to what we often call the school-to-prison pipeline makes it very personal to me that we're not doing that to other kids, that we're not looking at a kid and not recognizing their community and their diversity and their culture and how that's very important in the classroom. Because if you don't take that in consideration, you're failing that kid, in my opinion. And if you put your ideas on that kid, you might track them in a way that they shouldn't be. I also taught. So I taught middle school math after getting an engineering degree because I got passionate about educational equity. And I taught in LA, and my student population was my class was about 73% Latino, and 20%
I saw that. What brought you to LA from Texas?
I grew up in Texas through and through, and I think if you grow up in Texas, we're almost like our own country. You just have your own mindset, and I wanted to get an opportunity to get out of that a little bit, to see how other people thought, and then come back. Another thing that drew me to California specifically was I worked for Senator West when I got passionate about educational equity while I was in college. Yeah. And on the Senate Subcommittee for Higher Education, and one of the schools we always looked to was the UC system. So the UC system is phenomenal. The Cal State system is phenomenal. That's what the UT system was striving to be more like.
Right.
But I also knew that, because I had friends and other folks that I knew in California, their K through 12 had some inequities like we did. So I didn't understand how a state valued their higher education system so much that they had Cal Berkeley, all these great UCLA, but then K through 12 we have all these inequities. So the I guess the nerdy education side of me wanted to get in there and kind of understand what that looked like. So that's why I went there. But back to the question about kind of how the stuff informs you. When you're in the classroom, you just see so many things. I think about my students every day. It informs nearly every decision I make. The struggles that they go through, that they went through, compared to kind of what I went through, and that just informs a lot of my decisions.
Let's backtrack a little bit, if we could, Justin. And I was the one who jumped forward.
No, it's fine.
You're at the University of Texas at Austin. You're having a rough semester, that first semester. Improved over a period of time? How well did you do getting out of undergrad?
It took me 5 years, and I needed every bit of that 5 years to graduate. I didn't graduate with a great GPA. I think just under 3.0. I did have job opportunities and job offers from, I'd worked internships at Motorola, and they really liked what I was doing.
Finished with an engineering degree?
Yes, I did finish with an engineering degree, but, I didn't have a lot of awareness about. Let me back up a bit. I chose my college major because our family needed money, and in 2000, when I graduated from high school, I Googled who got paid the most out of college. It was electrical and computer engineering. So that's literally how I chose my major. So then get into college, and I started recognizing, I'm not really passionate about this. I'm just doing it as a means, and I was passionate about educational equity. So I got the job offer for the engineering firm, but I turned it down, and that's why I wanted to teach. I wanted to get in education field. I wanted to serve kids, be in front of kids, see if I can make a difference. And so that's kind of what my college experience was like. I had a lot of people that rallied around me to help me graduate. It wasn't like high school where it felt easy. I didn't study that much. I thank God for getting across that stage. There was many a time where I was like, I'm going home. I'm through with this. I keep working so hard to get a C. I keep working so hard to get these mediocre grades. So it was a struggle.
So before that, you graduate, takes you 5 years to graduate undergrad, and then you directly went to go teach?
Yeah, directly went to teach. Okay. So 2,000 miles west in LA.
And what grades were you teaching?
Middle school math. So 7th grade, it was a K through 8 school, so sometimes you had to sub for different grades. But 7th grade, and my students were my life. I still stay in touch with them thanks to social media allows that to happen, which is really good to see. How they're doing and to still communicate with them. But that was the most impactful point in my life. It was the most purposeful point in my life, kind of driven by family and faith. And I feel like you should align your purpose, what you're doing, with what you feel like you're here supposed to be doing. And that's the point in my life where I felt like I was most purposeful. Every day I woke up doing what I felt like I deeply loved. And it was really difficult to leave the classroom. I got pretty emotional leaving the classroom, became attached to my kids in our community and the other teachers, the veteran teachers that just took me under their wing and said, we're going to help you get through this first year of teaching, which is difficult. And I still stay in touch with them as well. But, it was important to me as an adult now to get back to more what keeps me up at night, what makes me passionate, and it's educational equity. And I left the classroom because you see so much. You see the parents working hard. You see the family working hard. They're also working multiple jobs. Yeah. I had kids, without naming them, that I wonder why they weren't completing their homework, but when I went to visit their homes, they're taking care of their younger kids, literally cooking, cleaning, washing, getting them ready for the next day. And that's why she's showing up having her homework not done. Right. Counselors, teachers, everyone in the community working so hard to try to pursue the same opportunity that my grandma pursued, that my mom tried to give me. And the system was failing. The system wasn't giving them the resources. The system was, and we are the system adults, however we want to push it off to someone else. The more we engage, the more likely the system's going to change. But everyone's trying so hard, and I wanted to get back to what I saw Senator West doing, and the idea of understanding policy and how can we make this system better so the people that are doing the most important work can do it well. Our teachers are asked to do everything, from everything, counselor, teacher, coach, after-school coordinator. I mean, they do so much. Parent. I mean, everything, really, for a lot of our kids. Doctors in some cases.
Absolutely.
We have to change the system to create an environment that allows our educators to thrive and our kids to thrive. And I didn't see that when I was teaching it.
Definitely want to get back to that. We're going to do that in our second segment.
Okay.
Just before we get there, okay, so you graduate, you're teaching for a couple of years, then what happens? Do you come back to the
I come back to Texas, yeah. I applied to law school, got into law school, and then just got engaged in education policy. Again, worked for the state legislature, trying to understand statewide education policy. Worked for the ACLU on school-to-prison pipeline litigation. This was like in 2007 when people didn't really believe. We had community meetings trying to tell folks that, if this student gets disengaged in the classroom, it's more likely they're going to get in trouble. And it's more likely they're going to get pushed out of the classroom, which means they're more likely not going to have options, which means they're more likely going to end up doing things that they wouldn't have done otherwise if we would have gave them the opportunities they needed from the jump. So worked for them, did a lot of nonprofit type law. I came back to Texas because my mom lived here and she was having some surgeries. I just felt too far away from her. I needed to be closer to her. Again, going back to family and faith. She got sick when I was in California. And on a teacher's salary in California, I could only really afford to come back Christmas. I couldn't keep coming back Thanksgiving or just a random weekend. That bothered me. So I knew I was coming back to Dallas. So this was kind of one of the paths, go to UT Law and then come back to Dallas. So I went back to UT Law. Loved it, had a great experience. Got a lot of public interest experience. Ended up joining a law firm here, trying to balance community engagement and working in a law firm that didn't work out very well. So ever since then, I've just been kind of getting less and less engaged in legal and getting back to purpose. I mean, I feel like what wakes me up and I'm most passionate about is this education system, public education, and making it equitable, where everybody's getting opportunities.
And Justin, I noticed that you did really well in law school. You graduated highly in law school. Didn't do as well in undergrad. You mentioned that you didn't do as well in high school. What do you think? Was there a switch flipped, or what happened?
I think there was. I think I learned to study. I think the biggest piece of where I struggled in undergrad was just, I really didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to take notes very well. So I think that was a piece. Being coached 5 years, support systems at UT. So UT had the Equal Opportunity Engineering program, which really helped students of color with that transition, where we got special tutoring and et cetera. But I also think, when I taught for 2 years in LA, I woke up really early in the morning, spent all day with my kids. I had a different work ethic at that point. I was going into law school, having worked long days. Right. So I treated law school like work. I woke up early, went to the library until class started, went to class, didn't go home, didn't leave, went straight to the library, brought my lunch, ate lunch. It was a 11, 12-hour day that I treated as if I was teaching, an 11, 12-hour responsibility as a teacher. So I think that helped me. I was much more focused as the probably older end of the law student spectrum.
You mentioned you joined a law firm and that didn't work out too well. What was it about that culture? What happened for you?
I loved the law firm I joined. I got a lot of great experience, sophisticated, met some great people. A lot of those people actually are supporters of our campaign, whether volunteer or financially. So great experience. The challenge for me was being able to serve within the community. So when you work at some of these large law firms, doing sophisticated, complicated work, it's rigorous. You have to be there.
Can't do anything else.
Yeah. It'll be a Saturday and your phone will go off and you have to go to the office and work, or there might be a community meeting on a Thursday that you can't go to because you need to be in the office. And getting back to purpose. And my wife is my partner in this. She knows what I'm passionate about. She shares this passion.
Yeah.
And we just knew that if I wanted to serve more in that capacity, I couldn't give that much time to the law firm. So it wasn't the people, it wasn't the firm or the experience, it was just the time. I needed it back to serve the community, which I've always been doing, whether it's commissions or task force or just mentoring or spending Saturdays mentoring, whatever I can. It's important to me. You only get one shot at this.
You mentioned your wife, and we didn't even talk about her.
Oh, yeah.
You guys met and got married?
Sorry, dear.
Yeah. When was this? When did you guys get together?
We met. We grew up in the same church, actually. We never really had conversations. We were in different cliques. My mom and I, we were going to get out of church before the Cowboys kicked off. Chastity's family, Sunday school, she was in choir. She did Bible. They were there a lot. Her dad was a deacon, still is a deacon.
They catch the Cowboy game on the DVR later that evening.
So we were, me and my mom, anyways, always been Cowboy fans.
Yeah.
So we first had our conversation. She was working at a law firm that I ended up working at while I was in law school, and they were doing a recruiting event at UT, and we just reconnected. You remember me from Cornerstone Baptist Church? Yeah, and we connected there, and we kind of built our relationship from there. It was one of those things where I think she thought I was interested in the firm, and I was not. I was interested in her. So that's kind of how that grew, and she's phenomenal. She's an attorney here in Dallas as well, but she's deeply committed to community. She's from Fort Worth. She had a similar experience. She does a lot of mentorship and organizing, empowering female women of color.
Yeah.
Because as you know, this is the legal field is not a field where people of color have been able to historically thrive. The firm I was at, didn't have a lot of minority partners. It's probably the same for all the others. So she has a group that really works to empower folks so they give each other business, they network with each other, they build the relationships to really try to empower them to have the influence they need to make sure that a female attorney of color coming out of UT or U of H School of Law can get access to opportunities. So she believes in the same push for opportunities that I do, and she's fully supportive of what I'm doing when I'm running this race. I wouldn't do it if she wasn't. I wouldn't be able to do it if she doesn't. She's a phenomenal mom. Mother's Day just passed. She's a phenomenal woman.
How many kids do you have?
We have two.
Two.
Maya is 5. She'll tell you 5 and 11, 12, so that's just how she is.
Yeah.
And Alex is 2.
Okay.
And Alex reminds me, well, they both, that same energy that I think got me in trouble, I see it in them. Well, I think it's just curiosity. Kids are curious and they push the limits.
Right.
So they're really intentional about making sure they know who they are, but also allowing them to thrive and not get kind of oppressed or pushed back by a system.
Maya in school yet?
Yeah, Maya's in school. Maya is just finishing up her kindergarten year at Hockaday. Alex is 2, and he's at a child care center. But which is important. He's getting quality early childhood education, which I think should be universal, at least starting in 3 and 4s. And it needs to be accessible, meaning, right now, I'm sorry I'm getting on my platform, but DISD has pre-K 3, which is half a day, either in the morning or the afternoon, and that's pre-K 4, which ends in the afternoon. Pre-K 3 half day doesn't work for me, doesn't work for any of our working families in any part of the city. So talking universal access where it's all day, but also access where, it's in the neighborhood where people live. If you, I have the privilege where I can go to work at certain times. Most people do not. So that I watched this video of this mom that woke up at like 4:30 in the morning to get the bus stop at 5 to get to the early child care center, and she was always late to work. Like, she shouldn't have to go that far to get a job. Frankly, there should be jobs in our communities, but she shouldn't go that far to get her kids in quality. We need to put them across the city where people have access to this, because it's critical. If we plant the seed and we invest there, it changes the trajectory of where our kids are going. We're
definitely going to get into platforms and specifics in terms of what it is you're running on and what you think we should see changes made in DISD. Before we get there, I'm a chronologist. I love to see the chronology kind of unfold and see what happens next and hear the story and see how it plays itself out. You leave your law firm and do what?
I go in-house counsel to a company. Okay. So it went from the random hour, some more 8 to 5 type schedule, which was a huge step for me in my engagement in the community, and it also gave me general corporate experience. So when I was at the law firm, I did the same type of work all the time because there's so much of it. You can literally do the same thing every day. Different levels of sophistication. Like the partner was way smarter than I was, but this allowed me to get the full scope of a business and what's going on within a business, and be an attorney for the accounting team and the marketing team and the construction team and et cetera. So that's where I went. And then from there, I went to another company to go part-time. And I probably did this 2 years ago. And again, that's part of me and my wife working together so I can get more engaged. So we did that so I could serve on some committees. I started teaching adult literacy at this organization called LIFT. And LIFT teaches adult literacy and math. So I did the math for people that didn't get their GED out of high school so that they could pass the test to get into the workforce. So, I wanted to get back to that. Not only just education policy, but back to teaching a bit. Yeah. And that gave me an opportunity to do that without going full-time like in a classroom. So that was kind of the professional trajectory. I'm still there part-time, and it's been good. I have a general counsel who's supportive of that, and it's
I've seen some things with respect to you being part of DISD specifically. I think you were on the Racial Equity Committee, Citizens Budget Review Committee. Tell us a little bit about that, what you kind of prompted you. We're kind of getting this from your entire history. The focus was there, but the action that you took in terms of acquiring those steps.
The first time when I moved back to Dallas, my wife was already here. When I moved to join my wife here, the first thing I signed up for was the Citizen Budget Review Commission, and I was just trying to find a way to get engaged in DISD. I think, again, public schools are the foundation of our society, the most important piece. I'm biased, obviously, but I will defend that in any room, in any space. Traditional public schools, our neighborhood schools. So I just reached out to people. I started emailing people, what can I do? And I reached out to the incumbent, and wanted to serve on the Citizen Budget Review Commission. Each trustee appoints someone, and what you do is you just review. Every department of DISD came and proposed their budget, so you get a good idea of all the departments, but you also get a good idea of the budgeting and how tough it can be to do what DISD does with the money that they have, given their population and the broad, diverse needs of their population. So that was the first thing I did. I served on it for 2 or 3 years. And then I also did the DISD Racial Equity Task Force, and I was a chair of it for a while. And that was important to me because racial equity is one of my platform issues. I think every decision DISD makes should be through a racial equity lens. And that could be a lot of things. That can be, if we're going to move our administration building north, is that accessible to most of our families? Does it make it difficult for our low-income families to get there? Does it make it difficult for the Latino community to get there, or the African-American community? Yeah. If we're recruiting teachers, are we recruiting teachers that reflect the demographics of our student body? Do we have our culture immersed in the student body? Are we talking about Latino leaders, African American leaders? I mean, we have so many cultures within DISD, but is our culture reflecting? Because one of the things I tell people a lot is, I went to law school, and there's some huge African American attorneys. People mostly know about Thurgood Marshall, but there's many others. Charles Hamilton Houston, who trained Thurgood Marshall and basically created the Howard Law School. I didn't know about these individuals, so I was in law school. To think if we take our leaders within our communities and put them in front of our kids early, it gives them something that they can see it's actually possible. I grew up in Texas, so I know who Davy Crockett is. I know who Stephen F. Austin is. I know who James Bowie is. But what does that do for a Latino kid or an African American? We have leaders and phenomenal people that have shaped this world from all. So that's the racial equity means we need to be very more cognizant of different cultures and diversity and how that can impact achievement. How a kid can do better in school if we understand their culture and we understand our diversity. So we need to do that everywhere.
Absolutely.
So that's why I love that commission.
Well, lots of people don't understand, and we've got people, again, listening from around the world, quite honestly. 95% of the students in DISD specifically are students of color. 52%, I think, now make up our public school systems. Latinos make up our public school systems. So, looking at it from that perspective, you start getting an idea of why, being on a racial equity committee and kind of understanding those needs and those adjustments are so important. We're going to take a quick break. Just a couple of minutes and come back, and then we're going to delve into those platforms that you've been chomping at the bit on, the stuff that you can just tell you're passionate about. But we're going to do that, so you guys rejoin us in about 2 minutes, and we'll come back with Mr. Justin Henry.
Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas, here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Hey guys, thank you so much for rejoining us again. Our special guest this afternoon is Mr. Justin Henry, who is running for District 9 trustee here in DISD. Justin, we were talking earlier about you, kind of where you're kind of coming from, your upbringing and other things. Now we're going to get into to your platform, some of the things that are important to you. For you, what's most important about your first day on the job as a trustee?
So, 4 things we've been running on that's incredibly important, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show. The first is high quality early childhood education. I would love to be at universal pre-K3, pre-K4. That's going to talk funding. We'll get to that in a second regarding funding. I just think if you plant the seed that early, it changes the trajectory of our kids. I've seen it personally with our own kids. The research is there. We just need to commit to it. The second piece that we're focused on is teaching as a profession. And I used to be an educator, and what that means is we need to elevate and treat teachers the way they deserve to be treated, and I don't feel like that's generally happening, whether it's talking, whether it's compensation, whether it's resources that we give them and support them. I've been an engineer, I've been a teacher, and I'm currently an attorney, and teaching 7th grade math was the most difficult and rigorous of all 3 of those, and I think it's the most important and purposeful as well. So our values, our policies need to reflect that. We can't put our kids first without first putting the people that are in front of them every day first. So I want DIC to be a world-class destination for teachers. The third piece is racial equity. We talked about that. I want everything viewed through a racial equity lens. We're very, people often ask, well, DIC is predominantly students of color. Why do you need racial equity? I think that's the very reason you do need it. Because when you're serving a diverse population, you have to take into account the community they live in, their culture, their values, how they communicate with each other, or you're not going to be able to reach their potential. And the last piece is community engagement. And, we want to meet the community where it is. We want to empower the community. We want to inform the community. And we feel like that hasn't happened in the past. We always say we want to govern the way we're running this campaign, and that's how we've run this campaign. We've knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. I don't have the exact number, but well over 11, 12,000 doors, talking to people in their neighborhoods, at their churches, where they congregate, because we wanted to know that we're going to be there. We're going to listen. So community engagement is huge.
Universal pre-K, everybody loves it. Everybody talks about it. Everybody, we're support. But let's talk specifically what universal pre-K means. We do have a pre-K system here, and DISD is half day paid, I think is what it is. Again, you were talking about the difficulties or the challenges parents might have in terms of having. Talk about the age group that we're targeting in terms of what of course pre-K. It's before kindergarten. So why the importance? Why an emphasis on that, and how that kind of plays itself out over the context of a couple of years? I think 3rd grade is kind of where our next. 3rd
grade is where a lot of data points happen, where people see trajectories changing. And let me back up. I should have started. Our campaign model is opportunity for all. And again, when we talk about public schools, I think it's the foundation of society, and we all should be engaged. If it was up to me, we would all be marching in the streets in support of our public schools, whether it's resources, whatever it might be. So when we talk about these challenges of resources, I try not to be limited in our thinking. There's the DISD budget, there's money we get from the state, et cetera. But our city needs to make a fundamental commitment to our public schools. That's the nonprofits, that's the individuals, that's the corporations, that's a grandma whose kids are out of school, that's a single person that doesn't have any kids. We need to build a movement where people are really starting to see why this is important for our city. Pre-K3, pre-K4 is one of those things where a lot of people in the city disagree on. This is something we agree on, that can rally around this point of early childhood education. DISD already has pre-K3 and pre-K4.
What does that mean?
Pre-K3 means a 3-year-old is able to go to a DISD school or facility, because some are in support with others, and start getting educated. The same thing with pre-K4. So 4-year-olds are able to go to a DISD facility and get an education. It's important because, without spitting out research, the bulk of the growth in the mind occurs, 0 to about 3, really. But still, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old are able to soak in so much. If you've been around a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, you'll see 3-year-olds speaking 2-3 languages because they've just soaked it up. Whereas it's taken me years, and I'm still not fluent in the
After
second
12,
language.
man, you can't pick it up.
Yeah, like it's a wrap. So it's very critical. You get so much bang for your buck at that age, and we often talk about closing these gaps later, these achievement gaps, these opportunity gaps. Well, they don't occur if we don't get to our kids early. If we get to our kids early, that doesn't exist, or it's not as large. So you even save money on the back end, but it's an investment that it's not good for maybe politicians because it's not short term. The investment you make today in a 3-year-old, you won't really see, for a decade.
Right.
So that person likely won't be in office, or that superintendent likely won't be here. So it takes a commitment from a community to say, we know this is important. Let's just go all in on it. We're not going to see it really start to pay off till later, but we know it's going to pay off. So,
and in that same context, and lots of people don't like to talk about, certainly people running for office, it can be a difficult point to kind of come across, but I'm going to do it because I'm not running for office.
Yeah,
72% of our DISD children are Latino.
Yeah.
Many of them come from first generation families, people who are Spanish speakers. They come into the program. You got a lot of kids who are coming in speaking Spanish and if they don't get hit in kindergarten or first grade. We have wonderful, dual language programs and other things, but 3-4-year-olds who can start being incorporated in learning and education and other stuff, there's an opportunity there that gives them the ability to have the tools necessary to kind of go forward. And you're absolutely right. You want to talk about testing, you want to talk about all passing STAR testing, all these other things. If we don't do it early, if we don't start helping these children early, we're going to consistently have that problem. So that's the reality that we're kind of dealing with in DISD. I'm a huge supporter of the universal pre-K.
And I think too, with the I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you in terms of the funding. We get a certain amount of funding, of course, federal funding, state funding, and then what we have to kind of do locally. Tell us about what you know about the pre-K in terms of where we budget that half day and how we might potentially, we're going to get into budgeting and other stuff, but where in the world do we get full day pre-K monies for?
So federal monies are usually specifically tied to certain things. It was Title I, et cetera. Our state monies continually gets decreased. So that's a battle I intend, as an individual citizen to fight in Austin. We all need to fight this battle. We're continually seeing less and less funding coming from the state to our public schools. And that's very problematic. But what that means for us at the local level is the burden starts becoming on us. So every year we've had to pay more and more. Of our percentage of educating our kids. So it's a struggle. Money is tight, and people like to act like it isn't, but it is tight because we're not getting help until the politics in Austin change. So the way that looks like pre-K3, pre-K4, it depends. Cities like San Antonio have partnered and made a huge commitment as the city though, the mayor specifically led it, and then the city council got behind it to support San Antonio ISD to open up these centers across San Antonio. New York did a similar thing with their city, but that requires a partnership with the city. So that's something that I would look for. The city's also tied with money, so there could be issues there, but you have to look not only what you can do within our budget, but what you can do beyond it. I think there are, again, nonprofits and businesses that if they feel like there's vision and there's direction and there's kind of trust within the board that they're supporting the administration and some of the initiatives, that they would sow in. Because I think they believe in public schools as well. They have to hire employees. I've spoken to some of those companies and they say, we hire 20,000 employees. We want to get them from right here. But they have to be ready. So I think there's a lot of untapped opportunity. We talk a lot about opportunity within our city. And then back to what we can do just with DISD, there's a lot of debate about the tax ratification election, and that's a way we can get money annually into our school, or at least give the public the option to vote up or down if they want to increase their property taxes to go back into the schools.
Let's talk about that, Justin. Just real quickly, of course, state of Texas, you talked about the Texas legislature. We had about a $5.4 billion reduction in the amount of monies that we're paying in terms of public education. I think we're 46 right now in terms of per capita expenditures on our public school children. So we're far afield. Me personally, and this isn't Justin saying this, I think it's because 52% of our public school children are Latino, that there is a disinterest among many in the Texas legislature to educate these children or provide monies to them. And that's just my personal opinion in terms of what's there. And we have to see past that because the reality is, just like you're saying, these are our future. This these are the people who are going to be supporting you folks, Social Security and otherwise. So y'all need to, get with the program or understand that we're going to have a missing generation.
Off the mic, we can have a long conversation about
education. And we'll talk about it off the air. But we talk about monies. We talk about the TRE. Everybody, TRE, it's more money, it's more tax money.
Yeah.
It's a reality that we need to kind of look at. We do have to locally start supporting, the kids here. And it's incredibly important. And what you mentioned earlier, at least allow the people to make a decision. Tell us about how that works. The TRE is what?
Yeah. So the TRE is an acronym. It stands for Tax Ratification Election. And the superintendent has proposed it multiple times. He's going to propose it again, or that's what it looks like. And the tax ratification election basically goes before the board. It's one of those things that has to get a supermajority. There's 9 people on the board. You usually have to get 5 votes to pass something. In this situation, you have to get 6. The superintendent hasn't been able to get support from 6 board members,
Right.
only 5 for different versions. What it does is it puts before the voters the option to increase property taxes in the amount that he might request. His request is 13 cents per dollar. And what happens with that money is he wants to put it back in schools. We talk about these programs that are thriving in our schools, these schools of choice, these dual language programs. They're just opening a solar for boys.
Yeah, amazing
Trustee
stuff.
Resendez is getting a tag school in Pleasant Grove that is also dual language. So these things cost, if we want to recruit educators, if we want to change how we compensate educators, there's a lot of things that this money could be used for. So that's what it does. It goes before the voters. When he proposes a 13 cents, what that looks like is, I'm just roughly estimating, $140 million in new revenue. Part of that's going to get recaptured, so it's going to go back to the state.
Right,
So DISD would end up with $120 million. And I try to describe this a lot as a raise. It's like if your boss came to you and said, I'm going to give you a $1,000 raise, but I'm going to keep $200 of it, and you get the $800. I'm in the position, I'll take the $800 because we need the $800 to put food on our table.
Yeah.
There are a lot of schools, there's a lot of children that aren't getting what they should get because we don't have the resources to give it to them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to raise my taxes. I wish there were other options, but when you look at the state legislature and how they're, in my opinion, defunding public education, we have no option locally but to do something like this, and it's annual.
And what I don't think people always realize, Robin Hood, I think fundamentally started off as a good thing.
Yeah.
It's recapture, districts that have more monies, property tax wise, kind of funnel those monies to school districts that don't have as much, which is understandable. However, I think Dallas, the DFW area, or specifically Dallas County, is very unique in the sense that we have high property tax, we have high property values, but we have 90% of our kids who are in poverty. So it's a situation where quite honestly we need to make exception. The legislature needs to fix this or tweak Robin Hood to the extent that we can. The 13 cents, I know that amount, it probably amounts to a home of 180, 200,000 would be like $20 a month, which is there. It's something that is something that we would have to deal with, but it provides all of these additional programs within DISD. I want to talk a little bit about some of these innovative programs that have kind of come out in the last few years. There's a lot of incredible things that are happening in DISD that people don't generally know about. Oh, DISD is this, it's that. That may have been what was in the past, but we're doing some incredible things. You talked about solar prep for boys. The solar prep for girls is an amazing institution. It's done some wonderful things. Barack Obama school is just doing some, Irma Rangel are just doing crazy things. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to you talk about, maybe $20 a month. It depends on your home value. It can be smaller values too. But what that looks like for a student at Lincoln, like we could have given $1,500 per kid. Because what happened with he had a racial equity piece where the schools that needed it the most, the highest level of poverty, they were going to get more money than other parts of the district. Maybe like a Woodrow High School, they have needs, but they didn't need it as much as some other high schools. So, there was a significant amount of resources for schools. So that aside, there's phenomenal programs in the district. The district just got some really good results. I'm not a fan of standardized testing, especially high stakes standardized testing. I think that's a whole nother story, but we got some results from some standardized testing. The DSD's really outperforming a lot of districts. So academically, they're doing a great job, but they're also just expanding these phenomenal programs, whether it's, all girls schools or all boys schools. They have a lot of dual language programs that are popping up and tag programs. We talked about DISD having pre-K4. They do have pre-K universal for most people. there's some requirements, but that's subsidized by money. So there's just a ton of resources. There's programs, it's no longer called ACE, it's since evolved, but there's programs where schools that have the highest needs get more resources, in the sense they might get an extra administrator. They will specifically recruit teachers and say, we'll pay you a little bit more if you'll come teach at this high need school to help us turn around this high need school. It's been effective. Right. DISD had 43 IRR schools. They're down to 13 in the course of a few years. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And IRR school means your schools are performing in the bottom 5% of the state. And they're going to have less after this year. So these programs that cost more money have turned around some of our most struggling schools quickly. A lot of them came off in the first year of IR. So, and it's up to the administration to put out their plan. But they've shown me in my experience that they are able to turn around struggling schools. They were able to create schools that, one, serve the kids in the community first, because that's the most important part, but also starts attracting kids from other parts, whether it's other districts, whether it's people that would normally go to private school or charter schools. We have to compete with these folks. And I think they're doing a good job. DSD is doing a good job. Yeah. We need to help them continue to do that good job. Sorry.
Okay. I want to get into teacher performance, because this has been something that the DISD has been kind of dealing with in terms of, Miles kind of coming in and scaring some teachers, of course, and others in terms of how that was set up. A big component of it, of course, or was scary, as I recall, was the evaluations done by students, things of that nature. Talk about what you might look at in terms of a tweak for that performance and pay.
Going back to that platform, teaching as a profession, we have to elevate it to a profession. Too frequently, way too frequently, there are non-educators chiming in on what it takes to be a great teacher, or who becomes a teacher. So we really need to elevate the profession. What I would like to see is what I would call peer review, which means, let's say we identify a master teacher, someone that's a very effective teacher. We train them on a rubric, or they understand a rubric, and they start evaluating a teacher. So a teacher is evaluating another teacher, but you completely remove this standardized testing aspect. I'm just not a fan of standardized testing. So what they're reviewing is, how is that teacher's procedure set up? How does that teacher effectively communicate the idea? And what that looks like is, if Mr. Cedillo is a student in the classroom, I can go and say, Mr. Cedillo, what are you supposed to be learning today? And if that student can tell me, then that means that teacher effectively communicated this. So there's a lot of, I'm about process. Are they managing their classroom? Are the kids doing what they're supposed to be doing? So I'd want a strong teacher to peer review other teachers and give them feedback. And that should be incorporated in this TEI system. So I think we have to have an accountability measure. What we had before, ranked 90% plus teachers as being phenomenal teachers. That's just not true in any profession.
Right.
So we need an evaluation metric, but I don't like it being tied to standardized testing. I like having a student aspect, but it should be very minimal, just to give you feedback of how your students feel about you, because they are your students. So there's a lot of tweaks. I just really think we have to elevate the profession. And allow teachers to feel empowered, that they're elevating their profession. They want to. Yeah. Right now it's an administrator, so usually a principal, sometimes a vice principal will come down and do the evaluation part of the instruction. There's bias that can be in there, just normal people. Yeah. I know John Doe, and we're good friends, we hang out, so it's probably likely that I give them a better evaluation than someone who did the same thing who I really don't know. Right. So removing that bias by having separate, master teachers coming in and evaluating teachers on a rubric that everyone understands, that's normalized, the teachers understand what it looks like, the evaluator knows what it looks like, to just make it really fair. Yeah. And then it's focused to me more on growth. It's focused on making you a better educator, or identifying our best educators, instead of this punitive, your kids didn't do well on this test, so this is what happens to you. And being a teacher, I had a student, again, it's every student. I have a student comes in there, he's far different than he's ever been, misbehaving, talking back, and 2 days before his cousin was shot. Yeah. So there's just, a test is a snapshot. I don't want a snapshot. I want you to see if an educator is a good educator. Yeah. And good educators know what a good educator should and shouldn't be doing. And the results will be where they are.
That's right. for me, teachers, again, most important part of our society. You talk about elevating them. You think back to all the teachers, everybody kind of listening in that were impactful in your life. I know there's 2 or 3 in my life that really positioned me to be in a situation that has allowed me to succeed in my career and everything else. So incredibly important. It's incredibly important that we get it right. But again, all of this is intertwined with respect to us being able to pay for those teachers, give them the opportunity to come in and be professionals and get paid for what it is they're doing. We got a couple of more minutes, Justin, and I just wanted you to just quickly talk to us about the election in terms of what's happening, what people need to know about the election itself, and how they need to get out there and vote.
The first thing, we were encouraged by the results and just inspired and humbled by the support. We just finished our election. We were didn't finish the first part, 47% of the vote. We were 69 votes away from winning outright.
That close.
That close. We worked really hard to get that result. I think people didn't know if we would be able to get there or not, but and then there's Mr. Turner, who was another candidate. Between me and him, we received 67% of the vote. So the community is definitely ready for change, leadership. We're excited about that moving forward. We're going to continue to work really hard to get across that finish line. Early voting for our election, so you're in the midst right now of another election. That's not our election, and we have to explain that at the doors.
That's crazy.
Way too many elections this month. Our election is June 4th, early voting through June 12th. And I'll say that again, early voting starts June 4th and ends June 12th, and election day is Saturday, June 16th. So our election is next month. Pretty sure we're the only thing on the ballot as a runoff. So that's our election.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So the people who are listening, they need to be very specific about how this is going to affect you and when it comes up in terms of when you need to get out and vote. Yeah, that's huge. So I'm probably going to have you come back again in June and talk about that a little bit more.
That'd be great. And we're excited, we think it's time for new leadership. We think we're bringing something different. We're focused on progressive policies that provide opportunities for all of our kids. We're willing to work with others to bring results and resources not only to District 9 but to DISD in general. One of the reasons I got in this race is just being frustrated. I told you I grew up in a divorced household. I felt like when I looked at the board, and I watched all the board briefings and meetings except the last few because of the campaign, and sometimes I see my parents. I see people that care about our kids deeply, but their individual distrust or lack of relationship makes it really difficult for them to make the best decision for the kids. It's the same like the household I grew up in. My dad and my mom loved me deeply, but when it became making decisions, sometimes they weren't on the same page.
Justin, it's all about the kids. That's your mantra, and that's something we need to get behind and support. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for the time. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your work and service you do in the community.
Absolutely. One last time, your election is when?
My election, early voting is June 4th through June 12th, and election day is June 16th.
All right, guys, you heard that. If you're in the district, make sure you're looking out for that election. You get out there and support Justin as best you can. District 9, Dallas Independent School District. Okay, Justin, thanks again so much for coming out, and good luck on the upcoming election. Guys, we're going to take a quick break and come back with our next guest, who we're very interested in speaking with as well. Thanks again, Justin. You guys return in 2.
The law offices of Eric Cedillo, a professional corporation, a firm that handles legal matters in personal injury, auto and truck accidents, wrongful death, on-the-job injuries, criminal felony and misdemeanor, family law, divorce, and child custody. The law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, at 214-740-1628. That's 214-740-1628. Find them on the web at cedillolaw.com. That's cedillolaw.com.